Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be responding to 3 separate videos from 3 separate TikTokers who have differing perspectives when it comes to fat acceptance, body positivity, accountability, responsibility. These are videos that I have seen shared all over Twitter, because my Twitter is mostly full of people, well, picking on each other. It's hilarious, I don't care, it's Twitter. If you take it too seriously, you've got a problem from the offset. None of the people though in this use Twitter. If they did, they would have been tagged. They instead prefer Instagram or TikTok because TikTok is a hug box and Instagram offers the same opportunities of turning comments off. Mercifully though, the internet is forever. For the Americans, possibly a little longer with TikTok, you never know. It might not be banned at the end of this month. I live to be surprised by that one. We'll start with this person.
So I just did skincare for the first time in like 124 years. And I just need to know if doing skincare ever makes anyone else feel, and let me preface not to be dramatic, but like you can't convince me there's a blemish one on my face. My face is not perfect from that one time of skincare. Just me? Anybody else?
Okay, so I'm going to start with a disclaimer, post-disclaimer I guess. I'm really sorry about the audio here. I had to boost it all the way up and the background noise, I couldn't get rid of it. Second, everyone should have a form of skincare routine. I myself have one. I focus mostly on the bags under my eyes because it's quite thin skin and because I don't sleep as much as I should. Pores are important to look after. You often find if you haven't, you have greasy face or skin generally. When you do clean your face, a couple of days later you end up with spots because your skin is given this weird, vulnerable status. That says you're an unhygienic individual. How this leans into fat acceptance, well, she said she hadn't done this for 124 years, which should tell you that her best options back then were to scrub with either a loofah, a sponge, a flannel, or her hands, and some soap. Now, in this particular video, I can't quite tell if she looks good or not, because I also noticed, and because this is quite common on the internet, others may have noticed too, there was a blur indicating the use of a filter, and the weird Uncle Fester eyes, the rings around, did not help either. On to video number 2.
I don't have a problem with American freedom.
Why do I feel this is leading up to somebody interpreting with a form of semantics and or pedantics? Pedantics? Is that a thing?
I have a problem with where we lack freedom in our country.
Your country has a vast amount of freedom, more than many other countries in fact, that like to champion freedom as well. Compare your country, your republic, your third world one at that, to my, is it monarchy? Constitutional monarchy, that's it, yes, that. We don't have freedoms, because our governments, every time they're voted in, introduce more and more nanny state enthusiast bullcrap, every time. In your country, more freedoms have been introduced, have been announced at the very least by your next president. You might be pedantic enough to say, no, this is ruining our country. It's a republic. Shut up, you're not a country. Additionally, giving back powers to states is a better idea than having one big federal government controlling more. I firmly believe in little government, which is why I do not support any UK government because they're always massive. I don't care for it. I really don't. So you have a lot of freedoms. Do tell me what freedoms you think you don't have, and I'll happily correct you.
Our children should be free to go to school without the threat of gun violence.
The comment sent to you, and you are a body positive and fat acceptance influencer, is that threat will always exist within your country because of your constitution. And the, is it Second Amendment? Is that it? You have fundamental rights. There were some studies that were done not so long ago, maybe 5-6 years, perhaps a long time ago, that showed in states where there was more freedom when it came to guns, there was less problems. Whereas in states and cities, more notably, that were sanctuary or safe cities, where there was a massive amount of control, the problem was bigger. So the threat of gun violence is a buzzword term, so thought-terminating cliche-ish, used solely to try and make it seem like you're making a grandiose statement. You're the wrong person to make grandiose statements. People are pointing out North Korea in the comments to you because you have a basic and quite limited basic understanding of your own political system and your own freedoms. My country doesn't have much in the way of freedom when it comes to owning a pew-pew device. You really don't in this country. And yet there is gun crime. Strange that, isn't it?
Children with darker skin should have as much freedom as someone with my skin color to walk down the street safely without the threat of anyone carrying a gun.
All police officers should carry a form of protection That should be including, in the US, a firearm. In the UK, we don't need them, but in the US, you do, because of your abilities given to you through the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the amendments. All of that allows you that freedom. The police should have equal footing in that, because if a policeman doesn't and someone pulls a gun out on them, they're done. They know they're done. Your logic is that everyone shouldn't have one, but those that commit crimes are committing crimes. They're not interested in obeying the law. If you remove the firearm from the police officer, you're just increasing the number of cops that get killed. And there are vast cultural differences depending on the state you are in. And you mentioned children of colour. Of course you are, because you need to white knight and virtue signal as much as humanly possible. Since you spend most of your time in your content talking about obesity, I'm not surprised you'd also latch onto other things that aren't as popular a discussion point. I wonder if you did any content after Trump won, the popular vote especially.
Me merely choosing not to have a gun doesn't make me safe from gun violence.
Then maybe you should get one. You have the freedom to have one after all. In my country, it's a bit on the haram side, and you would go to prison for it, if not legally. Possessed, that is. If I lived in your country, or was a US citizen, I would own many. I'm not even joking. In this country, I have a few Nerf guns. In yours, I'd have the better versions of those Nerf guns. Why? Because for the same reason a dog licks their own balls. Simply, I can.
Because a gun doesn't protect the rights of the one who carries it, it takes away the rights of those that they are wielding the gun against.
A pew-pew doesn't protect the rights of the one who carries it. Actually, yes, because you're not a country, you're a republic. If someone tries to encroach upon your freedoms that are constitutionally bound, you are well within your right to use it. It's why you have the right to bear arms, in case a federal government tried to take control of everything, which it can't do. It's why little government is better than bigger government. You're trying to make a prophetic point here, and it's absolutely hilarious. I've got a friend I do politics streams with on Rumble. He sees this video, he sees your comments. I'm sure I'm going to get it in the ear about this. It's one of the dumbest takes I've ever heard from somebody who has all the freedoms and rights, chooses not to have them and believes no one else should have them either. Stick to the content you normally make, and that's about being fat and how that's fatphobic for anyone to call you fat. I haven't spelled that PH, it's strictly FAT with you. Stick to your lane of commentary because you're not in the politics realm and you shouldn't. You don't have the acumen for it.
That is why we need to repeal the Second Amendment and establish real, actual gun control in our country.
1, not a country. 2, don't repeal the Second Amendment. 3, criminals ignore that and will use guns anyway because that your country, republic, is far too big to control such a thing. How much of a moron do you have to be to think in such an idealist manner? You need firearms. Every citizen does. It is your birthright, and quite frankly, you should have as many as you can. Someone in America might now say, you're wrong here, Meg. You should only have like 1 pistol, 1 shotgun, maybe a rifle, an AR-15 or something. Like, have whatever you want. Have a whole armory if you like. I've got swords, and I'm quite happy with them. If the time came, I would sharpen them, because science demands I cut one with a melon. I've got Herogrim. I swear I can do it. You're an idiot for thinking like this, thinking that change on this scale would change the nature of culture and society in many different states that have their own biomes within them. People aren't going to change just because guns are gone. Look at the freedoms given up in countries around the world that gave up their firearms in the past 10 years. It's not a good look, because any government that has that much control over you means you don't have any freedom. You started this by talking about the freedoms you don't have. You didn't explain any you don't have. You said you'd give up one instead. How embarrassing is that? Stick to your lane, as I earlier said, and talk about being fat and how it's everyone else's problem. On to the 3rd video.
People have been trying to sound off the alarms for literally months, going on years, about the way in which we are reverting back to a thinness in culture and the way in which we are encouraging eating disorders and thinness above all else. Like, we have been talking about that for ages now.
Let me guess. It's so hectic and you're over it. See, I like that society's still doing it. I like that the Overton window sort of shifts from time to time, and that this discussion becomes a more prominent discussion, where it needs to be accepted. It's not good. Life expectancy is going up, where people are healthier, that is. But then people who choose to be this drag that down, stamp it out early enough with children, and they're less likely to be this when they're an adult. If they're a millennial, well, they're screwed, because they've chosen it and they're too prideful to do anything right for themselves. You should be more conscious, you should be more aware, you should be more in tune with your body. You spend all that time and effort making your face look good, the rest of you gave up. Sorry, you gave up on the rest of it, because you think the face is enough.
For, I think, 2-3 years at this point? What I need y'all to understand is that the consequence is not just going to be for fat people. Like, yes, we were hit first, and we were hit the hardest, but this consequence is also going to be impacting thin people, and we're seeing it happen in real life, in real time.
Is that a bad thing, though, that more people go to the gym? Is it a bad thing that more people are paying attention to what they eat? Now that could be a yes, because food has gotten so expensive, people are having to reduce their portion sizes, because states have failed, in many countries, to reduce inflation for various reasons, or excuses in some cases. My country is a great example of it. They screwed the farmers, and now they've introduced a tax on the employers, for example supermarkets, which means in turn, because of their own investors, they have to reduce hours for staff, introduce more self-checkout services, which means less staff on the shop floor. Basically, the markets are being hurt, and some people are thinking only short-term when it comes to a solution to that. So is it a bad thing? Yes, in that context. No, when it comes to people looking after themselves. Because if you can look after yourself and you choose to look like you, no is the answer.
The way in which these trends impact the way that we view our bodies, like, as someone who is very confident and comfortable with my body, even I have been fighting these, like, ED thoughts because of the way that our culture has brought back this whole thin is in movement.
Well then, by your own definition, you just contradicted yourself. You clearly are not comfortable if you are allowing this insecurity to come in because of what society is doing. I assume that means that you're a trend follower as opposed to a trend setter. Do try to imagine my shock.
This is not an issue with one individual person and their body and their appearance and their eating disorder. It's not about that, and that should not be the conversation y'all are having.
Why not? In fact, if every one individual took responsibility for who they are and their actions and their choices, they could be and actually live a better life by being a better person. So really, it should be done individually. Because you can't do it as a group, because whenever a group is highlighted, they immediately cry fucking victim like the pussy they are.
The conversation we should be having is about this rise in eating disorders and glorifying thinness in general.
Define conversation. Because I can imagine it is, can you please stop doing that? Or we're going to even harder. Stop shaming us by being thinner and healthier and looking better, living better. Because you're making us larger people who choose to be large because we're comfortable in our bodies, yet we're simultaneously not. You're making us feel insecure and wanting to be thin, and that's not good. Bish, have you heard yourself?
No one wins when we are constantly, consistently craving and desiring thinness to a degree that it consumes our life. Like, no one wins when we as a society focus so heavily on a pursuit for thinness.
You know, it could be body dysmorphia, because that can be treated. All you have to do is be willing to sit down with somebody and tell them the truth, which a lot of people seem reluctant to do because they are, quote, comfortable in their body, which is obviously a lie. No one is truly. Everyone has hang-ups, everyone has insecurities in some way. There is no exception to that. If you want to tell me you are in the comments that you're the exception, I'm going to call you a lie. You're welcome. This obsession over what you are and thinness is entirely of your own design, because you believed and huffed the farts of others. Too smug and full of themselves, on a high horse that is heavily reinforced, unwilling to bend or buckle because they're waiting to see if their spine will first. Spoiler, your spine will give in before your pride. We know this, as many of your type are too arrogant to understand that this is not good for you, and if any discussion has to happen, it's one where you have to understand you're the problem. Espousing it on social media is one of the dumbest things ever, and it's been going on for a while. It's the dumbest thing because, honestly, I know TikTok's a bit of a hug box, but when it's shared everywhere else, you're just going to get more crap. And it's well deserved at this point.